It is Friday, and I'm a bit moody. I'll survive. I got sweets, and somebody donated some food, and ascending the mountain for the firefighters, butchers, bakers, cooks. Please, billionaires, if you can afford it in these tough times, tip the cooks well, and tip the delivers well, and tip the waiters and waitresses decently, these tough times. And I feel much better now, and I see those flowers. Look at those. You have to cross to see these flowers here. Turn my head left and right. I cross the street as we're gonna go before the Sabbath. And I love this house, kind of twins. Perfect for my anonymous friend, and yours truly, that one's for sale. And these are beauties as well, eh? Look at those. They're so beautiful. And you know how it is, and always 24/7 for the firefighters, the plumbers, the bakers, the butchers, the nurses, electricians, firefighters, train conductors. These steps for my anonymous friend, for my fellow Aspies. And I gotta show off the Heaven Sent. This book has been a Heaven Sent, a supportive and practical guide for anyone with Asperger's, and wish I could buy my anonymous friend a house. Of course, Indigo, and that's how we got, of course, in the relationship of existing and being. But that's a nice house there. And once again, this book has been a Heaven Sent. Yeah, we're gonna go straight. Thank you. I'm going straight this time, but thanks anyways. I'm gonna turn my head left and right as we cross the street, and of course as we go on the left and on the right, always be prudent, eh? Turn your heads left, right, in the middle. Make sure you cross the street prudently. And I love to admire some beautiful gardens, always rock and rolling for the gardeners, plumbers, welders, electricians. It is close to 8. Pilots as well, train conductors and pilots, and all those, of course, who are involved in the production and distribution of food. Always rock and roll for them. And I got myself some sweets on the budget. Finally, they brought it back after like 3 weeks. I wasn't able to find it. Affordable little cake. So that's a little bit of gratitude with that. And this is my second video for the day. Earlier we went on that. Washing off my laundry. I'm glad I went. And last year I kind of damaged the laundry machine. Have to take at least 2/3 responsibility for that. I wish I could buy my anonymous friend a house anywhere on the island. And you know me, I love yellow flowers. And those yellow flowers are amazing. And coupled with the white ones, they're of course on the left and on the right and in the middle, and of course all the way we go, of course, the left and in the right and in the middle. And of course that is where we are now. Always meditating. I have this ritual routine, due to my neurological mental divergent condition known as AS, Asperger's syndrome, AS, also known as high functioning autism, and ASD level 1 autism spectrum disorder. ASD1 is basically AS, Asperger's syndrome, which is not a disease. It's a neurological mental divergent condition. And now we're gonna clock it in up because I want to do something different today. Instead of we going to the usual mountain, we're on the mountain now. We're ascending the mountain, West Mount, one of the 3 peaks of the mountain Royal. But I want to do something a little bit different than we usually do. Usually we go that way to Mount Royal. Now I want to see if I can catch the sunset by the back of the St. Joseph's Oratory. So this is going to be a little bit different than the other marches, and I'm already more than an hour in. I didn't want to start because I had to go to the bank. I had to go get some sweets, and then I had to go do something else. So I didn't want to interrupt, of course, and be in that relationship. So of course all that relationship is of course in the relationship where we of course have to correlate, and of course all that administration is of course the correlation where we got now to represent. And of course my difference is remarkably different, noticeably, not sometimes only with my stimming and my weird, awkward, strange gestures and perhaps clumsiness and awkward bodily movements, but of course overall there's no distinctive apertures or distinctiveness. For many Aspies and neurotypicals, it's just, of course, our communication styles are different. And yeah, I have the dedie, the disability and the disorder. The disability and the disorder. And the dedie, the disability and the disorder is something, of course, which we are, of course, keen to remark that we've greatly improved. I know the dedie and the disability and the disorder, where we have ourselves in the counterposition is to be. But of course that reality is something where we are different, right? So that difference is, of course, due to the brain mutations fundamentally. The brain has mutations at the micro level, right? So nano level, nanoscale. They're not visibly protruding outside of the brain. Of course, the cause of AS, autism spectrum disorder, also, because Asperger's syndrome and higher functioning autism is the same, right? They merged, fused a decade ago. Around 2013, 2014, so 11, 12 years ago, more than a decade ago. So when I mention HFA, higher functioning autism, ASD1, autism spectrum disorder level 1, or Asperger syndrome, is the same neurological condition which I have. And of course, in parentheses, I do have the DD, the disability and the disorder, because it is a hidden disability, It is. And I've come to terms with it being a disability. But paradoxically, we have the SS. We have the special skills. And those special skills are above average mathematical skills. Above average mathematical skills, right? Above average mathematical skills. And of course, above average linguistic language capability skills. So we have strengths. And those are that's the double SS in the other parentheses, special skills, and the DD, the disorder and disability, in one parentheses, nice red, my favorite color, and in the other parentheses is the SS, the special skills. And of course, like I said, the special skills are in the other relationships, of course, are to be in the relationship, of course, of existing in that domain that it is where we are today, where we have made a tremendous breakthrough, I guess, through blood, sweat, and tears in many ways, through blood, sweat, and tears, and through effort, and through my anonymous friends' years and years and years of support, because it took me years and years to accept it. So I gotta salute my fellow Aspies, and this book has been a heaven sent, and also a book that I recommend. It's called Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome. I finally have it since yesterday, Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome. And the other book which I recommend has a long title. It's more like a paragraph. It is called Teaching Asperger's Students Social Skills Through Acting. All their world is a stage. So as you can infer, detect, and attain knowledge due to the title of the book, you see where we lack skills, social skills, right? It can be problematic. So Just like many Aspies over the past more than 11 years, I made friends, lost friends, made friends, lost friends, lost friends, made friends. Here we're gonna pass and we're gonna go, and that's where we are here. Across the street brutally. So here we are on the go. See? Oh yeah. I guess. Well, wait a minute. Is it closed for pedestrians? I gotta double check. Oh yeah, that's French. Trottoir barré. This is French, you know. Okay, so it's closed actually. So we're not supposed to go by there. We're not supposed to go. So I'm not gonna go. Right? I'm not gonna go because we're not supposed to trottoir. Okay, so we're not really supposed to go up that way. Trottoir barré, utiliser l'autre trottoir. So we're supposed to like bypass around it because there's public works. That's French. Here we love our French, our French language. So we made the great linguistic compromise here, and this independent androgynous pansexual Aspie is also an artist and an athlete, and I always rock and roll in French and English, and of course always for the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the firefighters, the plumbers, the electricians, and all those involved in the production, distribution of food, truckers, and bakers, daycare workers change some diapers, and firefighters, electricians, plumbers, public workers. I know you're paid by the hour, and I had many jobs myself. It's just that I lost many jobs which I had due to, but this is not just for me. However, I have to stipulate and of course be clear and straightforward that of course it's not just myself as an individual Aspie, but this applies to my whole community. Although we're a tiny small community, right? Aspies, there's less than 1% of the population of the world who have Asperger's, right? It's not a lot of us, and so we can be very strange, weird, and awkward and bizarre in our characteristics, and of course all those characteristics, which of course are of course always to be protrudent in the relationship which exists, because I have no antagonistic, resentful, have anything, negative feelings vis-a-vis you, the neurotypicals, right? Vis-a-vis you, the neurotypicals, I do not. I'm actually pretty joyous, pretty happy. Sometimes I get moody, but still I have no nostalgia. My life is still the best day today, and hours and hours a day, even today. Today, Friday, is my cleaning day, and so sweeping the floors, cleaning my room, sweeping, hallway, kitchen. And I'm grateful for the place I have, because I live in a better place now. When I go back in time, my life was way worse, although a pattern over the past years, like a cycle that I guess I'm breaking now, today and tomorrow, in the coming days, weeks, and months ahead, because it took me years to also accept my Asperger's syndrome, right? For years and years and years, I rejected it. I didn't want to accept it. Right? And I've come to terms with it, and since around, slowly but surely, like a snail pace since October 2022. Since October 2022. So I've come to terms with AS as a disability, as my disability, but it's my challenge, but at the same time, the special skills, and I guess through the pain, suffering, and struggle, I have no antagonism. I'm pretty joyous, actually, and my life has gotten way worse. My life was way worse than it is now. I've gotten better, but that's just what it is now in the relationship of existing in this protrutant life, and look at those beautiful flowers, and with this knowledge and help, support from my anonymous friend. Like I said, I wish I could have given her, of course, a house. If I would have the money, I would have to buy her house today, and of course, that is just the relationship, of course, where it is now, of course, to get related about. But this is quite an amazing house, eh? It's quite a unique, of course, quite a unique representation, of course, of being in the dictum, of course, of being in that dictations of where we exist now, that it's always a beauty to admire the flowers and the admiration of the flowers. It is always suffused with this dictum, of course, where we correlate ourselves in the manifestation, of course, of existence, and that existence is always protruding where we got to be correlated, but nonetheless, it's of course something which we correlate ourselves to be in that relationship, and of course in that awareness of this difference, of course, because the difference is of course something which can be observed sometimes in our mannerisms and in the way we communicate, and the communication styles are of course a bit different and way different than for you, the neurotypicals. And of course those are the neurotypicals which of course coexist, and of course just the relationship of us and the Aspie community is of course the relationship of course which exists now with the neurodivergence, and of course between us neurodivergence, us Aspies and you neurotypicals, we have to build a bridge, right? A bridge is just like a chasm, an abyss if you want. It's like an abyss. So of course all that abyss is of course where we need to build bridges, small, medium, large, or extra large. So sometimes building those bridges, it requires reciprocal engagement and effort, right? Because my brain is different. Aspie brains are mutated. Look at those beautiful gardens. I like that combination of beautiful flowers. I like that combination of beautiful flowers. So that was just a beauty with these ones as well. They're pretty beautiful. These colorful flowers here where we are. And so that is the relationship, of course, of our brains, right? Because the brain, Aspie brain, they're mutated. As you can start seeing the river there. At the microscopic level, it's not visible outside of the exterior of the cranium. This is dangerous. It's not visible outside of the cranium, right? You can't really visibly see it outside of the cranium. So, of course, outside of the cranium is not even visible. And of course, that is the relationship of the brains. Because our brains, although the social skills, we might have less competencies, of course, then we would have the greater than average abilities in mathematics. And there's always some sort of math going on in my brain. As you can see my videos, I always discuss that there's always math. There's always mathematics. So, always mathematics as it is now. It is, of course, our dictums where we got, of course, to be in the relationship, of course, where we got on the left and on the right and in the middle. Hey, look at this squirrel. What are you chewing on? Hey, squirrel. Don't worry. I know you try, eh? So squirrels. Okay, see, I'm gonna show you how my brain works. I look at a squirrel. I was trying to compute. I couldn't see the exact size of what the squirrel was chewing. However, the squirrel was chewing on a piece that had an exact size and weight. So that's one squirrel. I wonder today, July 10th, on the island of Montreal, how many squirrels were there and how many grams of food did that squirrel eat today? How many grams? Maybe close to 45 grams. Maybe close to 156. Because it doesn't really weigh. It's not really that heavy. So, and then what is the proportion per its weight? For example, if the squirrel weighs, let's say, half a kilo, 500 grams or 400 grams or 300 grams. If it ate 30, 40, 50 grams today of food, then that is, if it's 300, that's 1/6, right? 1/6 of its weight in fractions, right? And then 1/6 is 17.5 in percentage. Yeah, it can be weird like that. So, if I would be with a neurotypical or with an Aspie, maybe if I would be with an Aspie and we would walk, we would march, the Aspie would say, oh, I think maybe it's 400 grams and the squirrel ate 80 grams. So that means that it is 1/5 and that's 20%. So we would go back and forth with mathematical ratios, mathematical estimated calculations, such as I just mentioned. Or see if it's 500 grams and the squirrel ate 50 grams, that means that, well, that's 1/10. So that's 10%. So there's mathematics is everywhere. Quantities, ratios, percentages, right? Because that's squirrel today, but then I have to also quantify today, because I would say from midnight to midnight, right? So up to 11:59 and 59 seconds p.m. tonight. From 1 second past midnight for 24 hours exactly, let's say minus 1 second to make for the transition. How much does a squirrel eat in a 24-hour cycle? I could define it from 3 p.m. to 3 p.m. the day. It doesn't have to be from midnight to midnight. It could be for any hour, 20 hours. So then we get a little bit more in depth, right? It goes a little bit more detailed. It's more advanced. And even here, see, gotta watch for the branches, because the branches fall from above, and when it's windy, I always worry about some branches falling and stuff, so just gotta be careful. Anyways, so that is the math that's everywhere. Now, that is one particular squirrel. Of course, there's varieties of squirrels, and there is not only variety, but in actuality, there's also the age and other factors, and of course the total amount of squirrels. And what is the average? A mathematical question. What is the average daily consumption in terms of the weight in grams? Obviously it's not in pounds, right? Because a pound has 454 grams. But then there's places where people feed them. So those areas in certain parks where people would feed the squirrels, that is higher. Probably they eat more there than what they find here in nature, right? So there's a little bit of discernment to be made here from atop the mountain, West Mountain, one of the 3 peaks. And my anonymous friend deserves a house like this. I wish I could buy her a house just like this, just for being my friend when I had no money, I was down and out and depressed and suicidal and rejected and lost friends, lost jobs, and it's not easy with Asperger's syndrome, with AS. Here, this number 6 for me. 6 is a good number for me. 6. This one for me, that one for her, and then we could switch every other full moon. 6 and 9. 9 for her, 6 for me. Then we could reverse it, put it upside down, and we can, every full moon we switch, or every season we switch. I live in 9 and she lives in 6. But they're big houses. Here they're bigger. Construction workers, Rock&Roll, and there we are. That's the St. Joseph's Sorority where we wanted to go, because I have the ritual routine. We always kind of stick to the same path, and I said we're gonna change it up a bit. I don't mind change that much, but I do have my routine for years and years and years. I have a pretty strict and severe routine. I pretty much do geopolitics in the morning, afternoon, and I do my marches in the afternoon, and it's a ritual routine. So it's kind of a repetitive or ritualized routines, which Aspies we have, these ritual routines of which we are concorded about. And when I see the St. Joseph's Sorority, I always remind myself that I will to build with your help construction workers and all willingly loving, pledge your allegiance to our family, Dragon Army, Rock&Roll, to build the forgotten goddess temple, not that she needs me or her. This one also would be good. Number 31 is a good number for me. 31. Nice garden. Love your garden. Anyways, the point is that I wish to buy my anonymous friend a house. I would buy her one tomorrow if I would have the money. So, of course, that is just the relationship, of course, of existing. So that existence is, of course, always prorogated and always insistent in the dictums, of course, where we have the programs and the parallels where we are consistent, and our constituencies are always in the dictums of the aforementioned will and desire for me to build a forgotten goddess temple, because I credited me surviving COVID, which I had in 2020. I thought I was gonna die. It was like death, pestilence, and disease for me. I thought that was it. I really thought those were my last days. Number 44. This one would be perfect for me, because I love... Oh, this one actually, 44 would be perfect. Where's 41? 41's there. So 41 for me, or 44 for my anonymous friend, and we could switch. Also these ones, perfect numbers here. 41, 44, these are actually perfect, because those are too big probably for us. These are decent enough. 41 and 44. If they're for sale, I would buy them. And trade with my anonymous friend once in a while, buy her a house, buy her 41 or 44, and we would have both. That would be nice. Anyway, so yeah, I will to build a forgotten goddess temple, the forgotten goddess temple. Not that she needs me to build her the forgotten goddess temple, because she's got the pyramids, so she doesn't need me to build her house, the tombs and temples. She's got the pyramids. See the pyramids send me every 11 years, send me there with Papa Crowley up in New Jersey, and every 11 year back here. And back here and that's the reality with that. But here on the island of Montreal, at the top of Mount Royal, here's the beauty, and together we'll to build the forgotten goddess temple, and the Imperial People's Coliseum on the Canadian-US border near the Great Lakes, to be 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome, and of course the Caesar Superdome was, of course, where several Super Bowls were fought and battled out. One of my favorite Super Bowls battled out there. Super Bowl 47. Here we have reached the sunset time. That's why I wanted to show off a bit of a great spot in my city. If you ever visit Hawk Island, Montreal, and it's going to overlook my old neighborhood, and I got to make the statement that there's nothing that I will to go back to. I live carpe diem every day, and it's a carpe diem every day, but you can come see here, of course, the St. Joseph's Oratory. It's this beautiful, majestic structure. Big structure, was built around the 1920s, or it's a majestic structure, and I will to build the forgotten goddess temple. And of course the forgotten goddess temple has the relationship, of course, of being, but that is just, of course, where we are now, and that's what we have. And I wanted to check a little bit of that structure here from the side. I think I think I can go down by this side here. See? I have it here, I have it here. Oh yeah, this is a perfect spot, see? Perfect spot to see the city, but we're gonna go down a little bit, and we're gonna come back up. But yeah, I will to build also the House of the Dragon, the Imperial People's Coliseum, where me and Donald Trump gonna fight it out in a boxing match. Because I've been challenging Granddaddy Trump since 2018, when I started first imposing tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel. And I got the red gloves created by my anonymous friend, and I'm auctioning them for $1 million. And so I'm pretty happy, content I made the choice to, instead of go to the other peak of the mountain, to come here and visit the St. Joseph's Oratory. And here we are on an island, eh? We love our French here. Oh, we got a little bit that's why sometimes in the videos you hear me speaking French, and I do French videos as well, but of course, predominantly I do it in English on my YouTube, but of course I do write Rock&Roll songs in French and English, and see how my brain works. Now that I see see the plane there? That's a plane, right? So if we were to, I know that the plane is going, it looks like it's going east, EST, right? It's going towards the east, right? It's going towards the east. And if we are to count a few seconds, although on the screen, it just seemed like it traversed between 6 inches and 13 13.3, 13.4 inches. In reality, of course, it will have traversed so much below. The below, of course, it is, of course, something that we will have traversed a lot, actually, because it will be a big distance. And that, of course, big distance would be enormous in terms of its actual distance that it would have traversed. That way it would have traversed. So, because it goes very fast, it's high in altitude, there's the illusion that it's only a few inches. See, for example, from there on the screen, it might seem like it's just a few inches, right? Between 6 and 13 inches on that distance. And I was getting another inch, another inch, another inch, another inch, and so on and so forth. So between 6 and 13 inches, and now we're gonna lose it off track. That is the reality, that in reality now, in all this time and space, when I discuss the plane, it's out of sight, so it's going towards the Atlantic. It's going towards the Atlantic, because that way the camera is pointing towards the Atlantic. And so it had traversed many kilometers. In reality, from that point to that point, the reality is that on the ground, it's many kilometers, right? Many kilometers. So now it's overlooking north, right? That's northwest. So the actual distance of the plane, it's many kilometers, right? From that, when we saw the plane there in the sky, when you see it, it's actually many miles and kilometers that it's traversing. Because when you might count to 10 seconds if you see a plane, right? So if you see a plane, you count to 10, from 1 to 10. In those 10 seconds, the reality is that the distance on the ground is actually many kilometers. Although it doesn't seem like that because it's high in altitude, right? So there's an illusion. For example, if I capture now on the camera a plane, you see it on the plane from the eye's vision. The illusion is, if you look on the screen, it looks like a few inches. But because it's so high in altitude, the distance that it traverses on the ground, it could be even 40, 30 kilometers, 20 kilometers, or 15 kilometers in just 10 seconds. So it's the illusion, right? That's how it's actually the velocity, just like with satellites. But satellites go really fast. So certain satellites, for example, could travel 16 times around the globe. So a satellite could be at this point here, and in 24 hours, it will do 16 times around the Earth. So that's 23,000 kilometers, right? Because it's about 24,000 kilometers. So 24,000 times 16. So it travels more than 150,000 kilometers, right? In a day, the totality, right? I'll give you an example. So, for example, certain satellites that are in the sky is 550. They're in altitude of 550 kilometers. So if it goes 16 times around in a day, that means that the total kilometers that one satellite makes is times 16, right? So it's tens of thousands of kilometers on a daily basis. On a daily basis. It's because there's satellites that are geostationary, right? Geostationary satellites stay in place to the equator. And there's ones that are moving. So some are moving really fast, right? Some satellites are moving really fast. And they're moving so fast that actually they can do the whole globe 16 times a day. So a satellite that does the globe 16 times a day from point A again to point B, that means that it is tens of thousands of kilometers in one day that the satellite traverses. But this is higher physics, this is advanced mathematics. Like, this is higher velocity, higher speed, this is more advanced physics. It's something that it's something that I guess we're not really conscious about it, but that's the reality of higher physics. So if you would build satellites, right, satellite telecommunications, you would actually compute all these mathematics, because you will know, of course, that the distance from around the globe is 23,000 kilometers, 23,500 kilometers. So 23,500 kilometers is how many times around the globe? So that is just a certain times around the globe that it goes 16 times, right? So 16 times around the globe, that is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kilometers, right? So now as we see the sun, right? For example, now the sun is setting here. but the sun is rising somewhere in the world. So every second, every hour, there's a sunset and a sunrise, right? So, for example, a satellite will, of course, travel so fast that in a day it will traverse 16 times the globe. So let's say a satellite will start its right here. 24 hours later, it would have done 16 times. So 16 times down 23,500 miles. That means that a satellite travels 150,000 kilometers every day. 150,000 every day, right? 150,000 every day. So of course, all that it is of course something which we have. So of course, that is something which we exist, of course, in the contingencies, of course, of existing. But that is higher mathematics, obviously. But see how my brain now works, because now I could go on and on about this, but again, I'm no Claude Shannon or Stefano Dobleja, but there's always mathematics, always calculations in my brain, right? The faculty of the microchips and the nanoscale is also a reality, because our smartphones, my work tool, are really mini computers in many ways, so many computers in many ways, which are, of course, of the faculty, of course, which are contingent. So now, as you can see, that is where my old neighborhood is, right there. Nothing that I will to go back to, see, nothing that's where I used to live, in that moldy place, moldy underground basement. I didn't even have a bathtub, so there's nothing that I will to go back to, and of course, nothing that I will to go back to in the relationship, of course, of existing. So, of course, all that existence is something which we, of course, have in the comprehension, of course, to be in the relationship, of course, of existence. Is that, of course, where we correlate our magnitudes, because that faculty of the brain exists in the specification, of course, where we are, of course, to be integral in the administrations of the fiber of the satellites. But of course, in that reality, it is always a reality which exists, and that existence of that reality is always math everywhere. So example, see, those helicopters, those choppers are going at a distance now, right? They're traveling at a distance of exactly XYZ per second. 1, 2, 3. Every 5 seconds, those two choppers, those two twins, they would have, of course, a contingency of a distance that will be traversed of exactly XYZ amounts, because they're going at an exact, and by the way, great coordination between the twins. They're going at a speed that is, I don't know their speed exactly, but I know that they are going exactly south. They're heading south. That I know that they're heading south, because I'm pointing the camera south. That way south, that way is north now, northwest. The sun, this is a sunset, right? So that's why I came here, for the sunset, to show you off a bit of this beautiful sunset, which you can come and enjoy. And that's where I used to live, there in a moldy place, underground basement. Nothing that I would to go back to. Moldy basement. Didn't even have a bathtub. It was like a prison cell. It was like a prison cell. And 11 years. This month has been 11 years. So I gotta say, I'm celebrating 11 years since I moved from that moldy place, underground prison type of cell basement. And nothing that I will to go back to. My best day is today. My best day is today, see? And there it is. I used to live over there. Moldy basement, moldy, no bathtub, no bathtub, but there, I used to live over there, so no bathtub, moldy basement. I was depressed, I was suicidal, I almost ended my life, and I crossed Canada coast to coast, 2017, my anonymous friend. So here's a great place for the sunset. If you want to go check out the sunset, and that's the west of the island, that's the north, and that's the east. So I'm going to do a little bit of hydration. It's important because I'm already 2 hours in my march, and I'm going to take the window of opportunity here, go HYDRAT and stretch a bit, and going to continue our journey back to my headquarters, which is going to take a few hours, but just want to hydrate and stretch. And if I'm drinking 710 milliliters, and if I'm taking a sip, how many milliliters will I be drinking now? How many milliliters will I be drinking? So there's an exact amount, right? So because this bottle is 710 milliliters, if I drank 71 So 710 milliliters, that's the 100%. So of course the mathematics is everywhere, right? So there's a certain percentage. If I take a few sips, that is a percentage of the math. And of course, all that mathematics that exists now in relationship, of course, to all the things that are around us are, of course, in the faculty of the brains, right? So, for example, if you're trying to calculate how much I drank from this bottle, now we have to put it in a jar and see how much is left. So if I drank 100 millimeters or 50 millimeters, that's exactly a percentage, right? That's exactly a percentage of the bottle that I drank, right? So now I'm going to take another sip. And that will be a further percentage, right? So every time I take a sip from the bottle, there's a certain percentage of the water that I'm drinking. That's the math, right? There's math everywhere. It's just that you might not see it. For example, this building has a certain amount of weight. It weighs a certain amount, right? A certain amount. So I don't know how much it weighs, but it weighs a certain amount. So if I take another sip, that'll be another percentage. There'll be another percentage, of course. There'll be another percentage. Another percentage, right? Take a look. For example, now. Right? So, there's math everywhere. So, of course, the other amount of the percentage where we are in the contingency, of course, of being is that I drank, let's say, half, right? So half of 710 is, of course, half of 710 milliliters is, of course, well, half of 710 is 355 milliliters, right? 710 divided by 2 is 355 milliliters. Just gonna see and watch it for branches here because they fall here, see, they fall all over. So of course just gonna translate a bit here. Oh, this is only French. This is only French. This is only French, but I know what he reads. It's just that it's a natural reserve. See the third helicopter chopper, and it's also going at a certain speed in a certain direction. And back to some math, if I am, of course, to calculate, because the calculation, now it kind of looks like I drank half of it, right? So that is 50%. If I take another sip, it looks like I drank half of the half. So half of the half is like 180. Well, it's actually about that. It's by milliliter proximity closeness, right? By milliliter. So basically I drank, let's say, 3/4 of the bottle, which is 75%, right? Because 3/4 is 75%. Do you see it now? When I say there's math everywhere? And I know I can go on and on and on, because for me it's a source of joy and happiness and contentness to do mathematics in such a way, to do these proportions and these beautiful flowers. And yeah, I do love flowers as well, and nice gardens. And of course, I'm no Claude Shannon or Stefano Roblecha, but I always kind of do these mathematics. So the ratio of the bottle, what's 100%, is 710 milliliters. And then those 710 milliliters, there's an equation to it, which of course, I'm going to have to drink it all. And I probably drank close to 90%. 90. I only have 10% left to drink. But 10% is 71 milliliters, right? That's what 10% is. See, look at that plane. That plane in the sky, now as I back these steps, that plane in the sky, in these 5 seconds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the distance on the ground will have been enormous. On the ground, it will have been enormous. And of course, that is just where we are now. Of course, that is math, that is velocity, that is speed, right? This is all integral to the realities of math being everywhere. Speed, velocity, increase, right? So there's always this math everywhere, right? Do you see it now? And of course, I'm no Claude Shannon, nor Stefano da Brescia, but sometimes I do connect with my parallel self in the year darkness, entering the second week of August 2030, in the year darkness 2030, 2030. I live in the year darkness. These are gorgeous, gorgeous flowers. I connect with my parallel self, and I get headaches from the science and the math that my parallel self sends to me, and my parallel self gets headaches from the rock and roll, from the rock and roll that I sent to my parallel self. Because in this life, my special interests are geopolitics, rock and roll, and geopolitics 24/7. Sports and fitness, dancing. Dancing is my favorite sport, and rock and roll, and that's what it is with that. And that's what we are in the integral aspects to be, and we co-represent and co-evaluate that mathematics, which is, it's always ever present, right? Math is everywhere, right? Math is everywhere. Math is everywhere. So that's the fleur of this. I got that can, I tat it up. And so, in my parallel self, in the year darkness 2030, builds, designs satellites, supercomputers, microchips, rockets, gadgets, microchips, gadgets, supercomputers, rockets, and of course all things that have to do with technology and telecommunications. My parallel self builds 5G networks, 4G networks, 6G networks, 7G networks, and that in the year darkness 2030, and the satellites, constellations, which actually have certain special skill sets in many ways, and special features which monitor NATO complex for total SSD, the public circulations of the trains, the transit, the pedestrians, and the cyclists. So I can go on and on. Mathematics, I can go on for hours, as I do with geopolitics on a daily basis. And again, my best day is still today. I realize that I have to impose certain measures on myself and not to continue discussing mathematics, because I guess nobody watches or whatever have you, but it is always something which exists in the faculties of that dynamical representation of where we are now. But that is always something which has to be inclusive, and the inclusions, of course, is something which we have to administrate in the plurality. So that is the administration of the plurality of existing now, and the relationship where we are now, but is always the reality that exists in that administration, where we correlate to ourselves and our faculties that are related and impingent upon the administrative affairs of the art of beautiful flowers. Oh yeah, my honest friend deserves a garden like this, and a house like this, anywhere, a house like this. I always sing the song, she wasn't my friend because of the money, 'cause I never had any. Wasn't my friend because of the money, 'cause I never had any. Wasn't my friend because of the money, 'cause I never had any. Wasn't my friend because of the money, 'cause I never had any. And of course, that is the reality of life. When I rock and roll, freestyle mode, 24/7 rock and roll for the firefighters, the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the truckers, construction workers who build the highways, the public workers who build the aqueducts, the plumbers, the electricians, the welders, those who pick up the garbage, compost, garbage, cleaning workers. That's their radio tower communication, which in a parallel life I construct myself, and 24/7 rock and roll, sports, fitness, dancing is my favorite sport. I am the priestess of the goddess. I am not just neurodivergent Aspie, somebody who lives with Asperger's syndrome, but it is something that, of course, has to be related upon, and that relationship is, of course, always multifactorial in the relationship of existence, and of course, all that domain which is of the us and your divergence. Aspie's writer that I'm part of this tiny minority, or a small minority of the population, so part of the tiny minority of Aspies, less than 1%. It's about less than 1% of the citizens of North America and the world who have Asperger's syndrome, who have AS, and it's not a disease, it's not an illness, and I have to be aware that certain characteristics and traits which are specific, that such as an intense absorption with a topic, for me, be it geopolitics or rock and roll, or even the love of mathematics, which I'm not an advanced mathematician, nor I did graduate high school. Unfortunately, many Aspies, there's a high dropout rate, 8 to 9 times higher than for neurotypicals. But I did graduate high school. I dropped out of college, but I have a good memory of the past 11, 12 years than before February 2014, January 2014. It gets a bit blurred, and before like November, October 2013, it just goes like a blackout, like blackout flash. I can't really be sure. Sometimes memory comes back, but that's so long ago in time, right? More than 11 years ago, and I'm certainly not that person. I died so many times, even during COVID. Can't believe it's been 6 years. Feels more like 4. Last week of February, first week of March 2020, more than 6 years ago, I had COVID. I thought I was gonna die. I started feeling sick about mid-February. Mid-February, I started feeling sick. Then, of course, mid-February till, of course, mid-February till mid-March. Mid-February till mid-March. Then, of course, I started feeling sick. And, of course, all that relationship, of course, is to be in the relationship, of course, of existing. That is, of course, always protrudent. What we have now in the correlation, of course, all that relationship, of course, to be in the faculty, of course, where we have that to be left and right and in the middle. And that is just a relationship, of course, of existing. So, see, Surrey, Garden, Summit, Crescent. But COVID, I was really hard hit. I really thought that was I thought that was it for me. I really thought that was it. I didn't think I was going to survive COVID. I really didn't think I was going to survive. I thought I was going to die. In many ways, I did die. And I remember my anonymous friend, again, if I make $1 million, $1 billion, $1 trillion, I'm going to give her half, because my anonymous friend was making hot water, medicaments, and of course all that contingency where we have now, and that's the correlation of what we have. And of course all that administration is, of course, where we got to be correlated in those relationships, of course, where we got. And in that middle, of course, is the relationship where we got. It's the relationship where we have the relationship of existing now with the administration of the plurality of the fundamentals. Look at that. That's a beautiful sunset, eh? Wow, isn't it gorgeous? And of course, that is where we correlate in that layers and layers of my, I guess, suffering and past. And, I have no nostalgia, me. But thanks again to my anonymous friend. I remember she was doing medicaments and hot water, medicaments, and well, the medicine was homeopathic, but hot ginger water, hot ginger water and homeopathic medicine, which helped. I'm sure she helped me surviving COVID. I got triple vaxxed, 3 vaccines. There's the river, you can see it. 3 vaccines, and of course, all that is to be in the relationship where we are now, of course, and that is just the reality, of course, of having been in the dictum. But yeah, I survived COVID, coronavirus, That was pretty intense, pretty painful. And I have no nostalgia. That's the river. See, the camera is pointing south now, so you can see the river there. But the river is actually far, far, far away. That's the river. So here we live on an island. Montreal's an island, right? So we're surrounded by a huge river. But when I say it's an island, it's of course a big populated island, of 2.5 million people. 2.5 million people, yeah. So it's a big island. It's like a metropolis. It is a metropolis, but I mean to say that it's also like a country. I love this architecture. There's something that architecturally appeases to my senses in many ways. Just love it. Well, I have a little more color to it, but yeah, besides that is great. So, AS, Asperger's syndrome, it's been since 2015 spring. Many people who have experience working with autistic people on the spectrum and in the healthcare system, which today in Canada is not going that good. Even the services in the public offered for Aspies were cut. Fundamentally, even the services for Aspies were cut, so that was that. The services were cut in the relationship, of course, of existing now, and that's just the domain where it correlate in that administration what we are now. So that is just the reality of living as a neurodivergent, which, like many Aspies, I was depression and suicidal, and depression and suicidal where we have now today, and to correlate in that relationship we have now. But of course, it has been quite a journey. So of course, quite a journey where we have now is of course the reality of existing, right? As existing today. So of course, all that is of course the contingency where we got now to be correlated in that administration. But of course, since 2017, when I crossed Canada coast to coast and ocean to ocean, that is what we have of course crossed, and that's what we are ever to be with. So of course, it's something which we have of course to be, and that correlation is that's when I crossed Canada coast to coast, summer 2017. It was that gorgeous. Look at those. Wow. It was so amazing. Flowers there. So 2017, that's when I crossed Canada coast to coast, ocean to ocean, and so I got the administration, of course, of the faculty, of course, of being in that relationship. So, of course, all that relationship is consequently where we got now to be correlated in that relationship of existing. So now it is the faculty, of course, of being, and of course being in that relationship with my neurodivergence, that I have no nostalgia, right? No nostalgia. So being that I have no nostalgia, it's of course something which we have of course to parallel with. And of course that parallel is of course the relation here which we have. And of course that is where we are correlated here with these beautiful gardens. And of course all that is to say in that relationship where we exist now is of course always contingent upon this administrative affair. So here we can see the south, right? We can see the south on that. And of course it is the relationship which are to be. And of course all that relationship which is to be, it is the relationship of course which exists. So of course all that contingencies is of course always now. So of course always is to be in all that faculty which exists now. So of course all that is to be of course in the relationship where and of course on the left and on the right and in the middle, and of course in the contingency where we got now to correlate ourselves. And it's of course the relationship of course where we exist. And of course all that faculty is something which of course are in the propositions of the brain being different. So this of course brain being different, and the fundamental difference of the brain is of course that it is a brain difference which of course coexists, and of course all that coexistence which of course excels in that dynamic is of course the coexistence of course which impels us of course to the strategies to be applicable in a certain case, as in when interacting of course with certain individuals, and of course certain individuals or people of course that are the individuals of course that are of course neurotypical. So these bridges can be built in reciprocity. It's always an actionable approach and an awareness of my difference, right? Because this difference can be seen as strange, weird, and awkward and bizarre. So to be honest, I'm not looking for anything specific, because I don't really need. I'm pretty joyous, happy. I guess I suffer struggle, and my only stress now really is financial. My really stress now really is financial, right? Besides financial stress, I'm pretty good. I'm pretty joyous now. Actually, I love working out and meditating, and when I do these mathematics, this math in my brain, I'm at home. In my zone, in the zone. I'm pretty joyous, and when I dance as well, I'm priestess of the goddess, priestess not a hokey, my name, if it's not for blessing, otherwise let it be pestilence. We got an understanding, and that's why we of course have the contingencies, of course, to be, and that is of course all the representational aspects which are correlated in all the domains where we have now to correlate, of course, where we coexist, and of course all that coexistence is the relationship of the relationship with the dynamics, of course, of the correlative aspects where we correlate, and what we correlate now is something what we have now to be, of course, on the left, and that's what we got now. So all the relationship where we exist. Look at those twin lions. One looks angry, one looks happy. Yes, they're twins, but one says, I know your secrets. The other one says, I'll smile for the good ones. And yeah, it's been a journey, and I love working out. I love training. This is my workout now. I'm glad I'm gonna finish my workout, and it's gonna be quite a joy to finish it. And actually, now I'm heading. I was gonna go to the top, but it's enough because I was an hour, so I have to also rest. I'm just gonna start heading home. I'm gonna discuss some geopolitics, and also I will to say that, of course, I have no nostalgia. When I go back in time, before 2017, my life was worse. I was depressed. Nice car. I want an electric. I would buy an electric one, actually, myself. I would buy an electric one, but this one's nice. 44 in the middle of 22. That's nice. And so I have no nostalgia. If I go back before 2017, of course, is the year that I traversed Canada coast to coast. 2017. That's when I crossed Canada coast to coast, 2017, and that's what got me out of depression. I still have the tickets, I'm auctioning them for $1 million each, and I'm gonna put, of course, the the new deadline goes from the 24th of July until September 11th. I'm gonna propose again a third time. I got to know special marriage because I'm part of the LGBTQ community as long as I can remember. I've been out in the open. It's been more than 12 years, as long as I can remember. As long as I can remember, I've been out in the open. So it's been a long time, and that is just the relationship, of course, of existing, and that is just the faculty, of course, of the administrative affairs which exists in this domain, and that plurality, of course, of rock and rolling always. Look at that beauty! Isn't that beautiful? I want to build the Forgotten Goddess temple. She doesn't need me to build her temples. She doesn't need me to build her temples. She doesn't need me to build her temples, because temples are tombs and temples. The pyramids, and that's what it is now in the contingent, and it's just the administrative affairs. And I know. This one, you remember in my past videos from 6, 7, 8 years ago, 3, 4 years ago, that it was uninhabited for a long time. Finally, it seems like something is being done with it. And if you see in my past videos, I said, of course, that I wanted to buy it for my anonymous friend, and of course, for us, but there was nothing which was done with it, right? There's nothing which was done for a long time. It looked decrepit, and it looked left out, like, for years and years and years. And finally, I see that maybe it's for us, but it's been a few years ago. You can check past by 3, 4, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. But again, Before 2017, I was depressed, suicidal. I have a few years memory of living in that moldy place from about 2013 till 2015 summer. So I have some memories of that dungeon, that prison cell, which was like moldy. There was so small. I didn't even have a proper kitchen there. The kitchen was in my room, and the bath, I had no bathtub. I did not even have a bathtub there. The bathroom was so small and tiny, it was smaller than a prison cell. It was really awful. My memory of that place is awful, really. Like a nightmare. So if I go back in my life, it was like a nightmare. So I have no nostalgia. For me, my best day is today. Carpe diem. Every week is my best week. Every day is my day. Every month, It's just that it has been tough with Asperger's syndrome. Sometimes Aspies, including myself, we might appear before a court of law even, and that's the problem. Even most judges and lawyers don't even know what Asperger's is. Most of you don't know, 80%, and it's the things of not having a filter. This is something that's kind of strange for us, not having a filter. Not having a filter. It's because we are different, right? So this one's for sale. We're different, so we think differently. We see things differently. Our brains have mutations, so there's nothing. You can't medicate Asperger's away. It's a lifelike condition. It's a neurological mental divergent condition. It's not a disease. We see the world differently, and so we can work on improving our social skills, such as I have tremendously. But still, there's friction with my anonymous friends sometimes because I will still be an Aspie, although I improve, I will improve, I will still be and have these characteristics, these traits, which are part of me, which are part of Asperger's syndrome, which are part of AS, which are part of me. Part of people with AS. We have different special interests. Some people with AS might have construction, history, science, automobiles, cars, trains, depending. It could be different special interests for different Aspies. My special interests are geopolitics, rock and roll, and dancing. Dancing is my favorite sport. And again, as I said, for as long as I can remember, I've been out in the open about being LGBTQ. I have even songs. I don't remember writing them. I remember writing the remixes and the different versions of LGBTQ theme songs, such as the Julius Caesar one. Julius Caesar, rainbow, black and white and rainbow. Give me a legion of homos. Black and white and rainbow played at football. Said hard grade like Michael Sam. This one a version after Michael Sam got drafted, but they didn't let him play in the NFL because he kissed his white boyfriend when he got drafted. Michael Sam was the first in 2014. Spring 2014, Michael Sam was the first openly gay player to be drafted, but they didn't play. They didn't let him play. Although in college university, he had records. He had records in the South, defensive records, right? In defense, he was a defensive player. So that's it was controversial because it didn't make sense that a player in college and university who has records, many records, like 3 different records for different defensive records for his career in college and university, football defense career, that he didn't play in the NFL. So anyways, that was a bit controversial, but I guess there was a breakthrough in many ways, right? But maybe because I have trouble remembering high school, adolescence, and childhood, and just before early 2014, late 2013, it gets foggy, and then it's like flashes, like a blackout. I can't really be sure. There's like a retrograde amnesia, I don't know if I was maybe I was a junkie or alcoholic for a few years. Maybe that's the cause, or trauma. I'm hypervigilant. I have this PTSD. I don't like violence at all, but I have these flashes remembering I was downtown Montreal, and this group of people was kicking me. It was 11, 12 years ago, maybe 2013, 2014. I don't know if I was drunk or on drugs. I don't do drugs. I even bought cannabis. I still have from 3 years ago. I bought it in 2013 summer. I still have leftovers. Legal, by the way. Legal because it's been legalized since it's more than 7 years. Since 2018, more than 8 years now. So it's been legalized. And I have these flashes. I was, this group of people several people, and some of them were kicking me when I was down. I was on the ground. I went home all banged up, bruised up. And once I survived a vicious, murderous, homicidal surprise attack, I was hitting the head a few times. I was hitting the head. And I hit my head on the concrete. And I hit my head on the concrete and had a dislocated right. I was all bloodied up. And had a severely dislocated right shoulder, right arm, and I had to go to the emergency room, and the Jewish General Hospital. In the process, I'll keep updating and have a new deadline for the new last 40 days between 24th of July and September 11th. Between the 24th of July and September 11th. So, see fireflies. So that's gonna be a drill. Last night, because I'm developing the Draconis Total Integrated SSD Legion in parallel to Genesis 33 Protocol Initiative for Total SSD. And the PPP for years and years and years. I've been calling for the creation formation of the public-private partnership Draconis, and the Draconis with the dancing goddess army to DJ for the priestess of the goddess. I got those trillions of kisses. Keep my name out of their mouth. It's not for blessing, rebirthing during this COVID. Adrian Hanna Dragon, trillions of kisses and trillions of marching steps. Trillions of kisses, trillions of marching steps. Trillions of kisses, rock and roll, and that's how we go, and that's how we drill, and that's how we are, of course, in the contingents. And of course, all that is to say now that I had to go to the Jewish General Hospital, to the ER, and the doctors there performed a medical procedure where they cracked back, like crack, a special procedure which was to crack back my dislocated right shoulder. And so it was successful, and I'm curious, what were the meds? What was the medication that I was prescribed? Because I was prescribed some medication, and I don't know if they were opiates. I can't remember if they were exactly when did I go and what was the meds, and were they opioids? If there were opioids, or if there was to regenerate the tissue, the damaged tissue. So I don't know if they were opioids or to regenerate the damaged tissue. So it could have been that it's for regeneration of the damaged tissue, or it could be that they were opioids for pain. So that I don't know. I don't know what the meds were for. They might have been for pain, or they might have been to regenerate the tissue, the damage of the tissue, right? And I want to know, when did I go? Well, procedure. I went after that vicious homicidal surprise attack. So it was one individual this time. This is a separate incident from when I was kicked, like downtown Montreal. This was in the Montreal Metro, still on the island of Montreal. And still on the island. And I had to go to the emergency department, to the ER, and I went there all bloodied up, and the doctors cracked back successfully and I was given a removable cast. Remember, I was given like a removable cast, and I'm curious, what was the meds? What was the medication? Was the medication to regenerate my arm, to regenerate the bones, the tissue, the muscle tissue? Was it for healing, or was it for anti-pain? Opioids for pain, to deal with the pain. So that I'm curious. So I'll keep updating in the coming days, weeks, and months ahead, I guess. But the new deadline is going to span between July 24th, and the month of Leo begins, and September 11th, because I also want to propose again and auctioning everything that I have and do a big cleaning just before the Leo full moon on the 29th. And from the 24th to September 11th, we're going to dance like I never danced before in my life. I'm going to dance summer dances, because in 2017 I crossed Canada coast to coast. That's what got me out of depression. And again, I have no nostalgia. When I go back, before 2017 I was depressed, suicidal, and even in the past years I lost jobs, lost friends. But finally around October 2022 I've accepted my Asperger's syndrome, and I'm different, as long as I am not looking for anything specific. If you are 18 plus, if you're 18 plus, you're black, you're white, you're black, you're rainbow. You can be black, You can be white, you can be white, you can be black, black or white or rainbow, trans man, trans woman. If you're 18 plus, hey, look at those cuties, little shells. Can be friends with services, otherwise I don't need. What for? Thank you, have a nice evening, day and night. But otherwise I don't need, I have my dream, my work, but yeah, I'm looking for somebody to exchange massage therapies mostly, but 18 plus, black and white and rainbow loving with trans men, trans women, white, black, I don't have, I'm not frustrated in any ways whatsoever. I don't have frustrations of any kind of that sort, but I live with my scars, live with my scars, and I'm rebirthing as Adrian Hanna, dragon, androgynous, pansexual, independent, Aspie artist, athlete, and independent, great geopolitical theoretical analyst, philosopher, thinker, and strategist who always does mathematics every day, geopolitical analysis, because just like the sun, just like money, geopolitics never sleeps. And I take great pride in my independent geopolitical work as the people's doctor who presented the thesis back in 2023, February, called The Privilege of Civilization, because civilization is a privilege, right? Civilization is a privilege, and of course the privilege of civilization is something which we all have at different dimensions at one point or the other, and the contingency, of course, of existing, but at the intersection of privileges between all of us at different points and different usages, such as, of course, the highways, the roads, the aqueducts, running water. These are all privileges. So I got to give a shout out to Hydro-Quebec. All this electricity that you see around about me for the traffic lights, the one that I'm using in my smartphone to do this video, vlog, work, comes from clean, zero pollution, zero emission energy. It does not pollute from the 63 generating power stations, which are spread across Quebec, and our electricity goes all the way to the United States, several states, all the way to Manhattan Island. About 1/5, 20% of the electricity that is provided goes to Manhattan Island, about 1/5, 20%. So that is a considerable amount, and it's clean, environmentally friendly, does not pollute. Our electricity doesn't pollute. And here on the mountain, West Mountain, one of the three peaks of the mountain, right between the east and the west, it's amazingly right between the east and the west. Slightly south, though it's not north, it's south. So it's slightly south of the island. So it's not, right, it's south of the center. But it's in the center between the east and the west. Although between the north and the south, it's south. And we're surrounded by an island, and I believe in reincarnations. I'm a mystic. I also say God, goddess, God, goddess, God, goddess, goddess. I was a priestess of the goddess back in ancient Egypt, up to today, ancient Rome. Priestess of the goddess from ancient Rome, and God, goddesses. And I don't know how the pyramids were built, but I was a priestess then and a priestess now, and nobody's born a dragon, and Adrian Hanna, dragon, androgynous, pansexual, and I rock and roll for the firefighters, butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors, electricians, plumbers, welders, putting these steps for all my allies and armies, and already marched today more than the generals of NATO auctioning these red and white shoes with 1 million. And here I want to show you something interesting that you're gonna maybe or maybe not like. That the number there is going to be turning 44, but it's 45, but you don't see 45. And it's one of the only one in Montreal, traffic lights actually, with a pedestrian crossing at the sidewalk. See, 44, 43, 42, 41, right? And just for this space. So the allotment, well, because in reality it is 45 seconds, but it's blacked out. We don't see 45, it's blacked out, but we see 44. So it's interesting that is the number 44 that we see. It's the only one in Montreal that you see. So it took us only like half to cross, and it's still plenty of time. So I always wonder how come for that small segment there, it's allotted so much. It's not really a high traffic area, it's a high residential area, but it's kind of fun. And again, I warn people because see, there's branches that might fall. See, this could have fallen on me, as you can see from my videos, because I always warn that when it's windy or meteorological condition after the rain or during the storm, that there's branches that can fall. So there's the proof. So So saluting those cooks, those in the fast food, warehouse workers, dock operators, warehouse workers. Hey, I see fireflies. I started to see fireflies last week. I love fireflies, and I remember 2014, 2015, where I used to live, close to my place, there was a spot where they used to come. But again, I used to actually live, it's 500 meters where the shooting, unfortunately, the tragic event which occurred, was a mass casualty event because several individuals died. It was a shooting, and they're still ongoing, the investigation in relation to Seth Hatfield, who left the manifesto. I didn't read it fully, so I can't really make a big analysis. But if you want to commission some work on specific topics, I'm always open to. I read a bit of it. So it was partly geopolitical, from what I could read, partly psychosexual, and partly some conspiracy theories, some ideological as well, from his perspective, ideological as well. And of course, it was I got some goosebumps from what I could read. I got some goosebumps, and it was pretty horrible. And it made me think, of course, that I live not far from that place, not far from there. I live 550 meters, less than a kilometer. So from where I lived in Côte-des-Neiges. I used to live in Côte-des-Neiges in a moldy underground basement. I didn't even have a bathroom, no small. It was like a prison cell. I guess I served my time. And when that incident occurred, I got goosebumps. I get goosebumps even now discussing the manifesto, because I myself found in 2016, I discussed it in the past years. I discussed this incident in my life, and I always pinpoint that I was saved because of that specific incident in my life. And of course, that specific incident in my life, which has occurred, was of course always due to, of course, the fact that I had, of course, to relate it in that contingent and that relationship, of course, which exists, is that in 2016 spring, I myself had discovered in a freely distributed newspaper, I've discovered Islamic State propaganda. See, even now I get goosebumps. See, there's the word freedom there, ta-da-da. Supposedly, from what I could have from my journals, I know a little bit of my life before 2014, late 2013, from the journals that I had. And so supposedly I got this in New York. Like I said, maybe I have a good memory of the past 12 years. So in 2016, so I have a very good memory of the past 11 years. Just before that, it gets a bit blurred and foggy, and just like a blackout before 2013, which is a long time ago. But 2016, I found Islamic State propaganda in a freely distributed newspaper. And see, I get goosebumps when I discuss it, because without a dissertation, I took several copies of the article. It was in a freely distributed newspaper, which was called something like the Hawaj Voice of the People. And I discovered, to my horror, Islamic State propaganda. I couldn't believe what I was reading. The article was calling on all, of course, to attack, and of course all to attack us, to pledge allegiance to the Islamic State and to attack us. So of course, right away, of course, I didn't even have, of course, the relationship. Of course, that is the relationship of me going to the RCMP, the event, that is, because there was an action, actually not just a relationship, but it was an action that I did, and my action prevented a mass casualty event, perhaps even way worse than the one that occurred, although the one that occurred with Seth Hatfield was tragic enough, with the loss of life and violence. I don't like violence myself. I don't like it at all. I do not like violence at all. I am hypervigilant, intense. My autism sometimes can be intense, and it's just the intensity which Aspies can project, but I don't like violence at all. I am hypervigilant. However, I am hypervigilant, but it is I guess, pain and suffering, but I'm pretty joyous today. I haven't been depressed and suicidal since I crossed Canada coast to coast in 2017. That's why I've been calling for the mass financing of, as a mass public-private partnership to finance tourism across Canada. We're going to fuse Canada and the United States by implementing my Trinity theories, by fusing the RCMP and the FBI into the CPS, Citizen Police Service, and the Imperial Police Service, and of course, fusing the FBI and RCMP and CSIS and CIA and CSIS into the Imperial Security Integrated Service, the Imperial Security Integrated Service, Imperial Security Integrated Service. So now the relationship, of course, which is, of course, in the administration, of course, which we have now, of course, to be in the relationship which exists, and of course the contingency, of course, now is also that which correlates. So that correlation is back in 2016, that my intervention, which is an action and intervention which I did, saved lives. Potentially hundreds of people. I prevented a mass casualty event, a terrorist attack, without any doubt. So when I couldn't believe what I was reading, I discovered, of course, many. There was many pages, a few pages in the article which should have never been published in the first place. Article should have never been published, of course. It was Islamic State propaganda, and in 2016 they were the Caliphate. But Abu Bakr, its first caliph, now they're on the fourth caliph, was still alive. And of course, their mysterious origins and their brutality, their sheer terror, they still reverberate terror nightmares years and years after they were gone. And their brutality is still unrivaled. Remember? In 2014, 2015, their brutality and decapitations and beheadings and decapitations and mass executions and decapitations and crucifixions. Their brutality was really up to today, was unrivaled. And they were striking terror. And they're back in business. Since 2025, they're back in business. 7 years they lay dormant in the deserts, in the tunnels, and they're back in business. But I couldn't believe what I was reading. I said, this is horrible. I went right away without hesitation. I took several copies. I marched to the RCMP. So I marched to the RCMP. And I made a citizen declaration. And of course, I made the citizen declaration there, and of course that was, of course, the citizen declaration, of course, which I did, of course, in that relationship that I declared it, and that was the declaration which went hand in hand with the newspaper, giving the proof. I gave them the proof, and I guess I'm still on some CCTV cameras, because it was cameras there and my name, I guess, in parentheses with my new name, because still have to pay to change my new name, Adrian Hana Dragon, still officially have to change my name, but it is, of course, the relationship, of course, of being and having the relationship, of course, of existing in that relationship and awareness of the realities of existing now today. So back to this event in spring 2016, is the event, of course, which was contingent, of course, of that relationship, of course, of the faculty of having that awareness, of course, of the administrative affairs, which is anti-terrorism work. And I prevented a mass casualty event, without a doubt, and that is something which we have, of course, now to be in the contingency, of course, of that event, which was fundamentally security, what I call I don't want to get too academic or technical or philosophical, but I deem such actions and interventions independent citizen imperial security actions, independent citizen security actions, independent independent citizen, independent imperial citizen security actions. So these security actions are, of course, in parallel to what we must do and be ever vigilant, especially now with the current state of affairs, which I predicted back in 2019. That is, of course, the prediction, of course. So, of course, all that prediction, of course, which is in the reality, of course, to be, and of course, because the Islamic State now is back in business. They struck again after 7 years, 7 years they lay dormant in their base, whatever, in their tunnels, deserts, underground, underworld, right? And after 7 years, they're back now. And they have the fourth caliph. But then they were super active because the intervention began around September 2014. The US-led intervention against ISIL, also known as Islamic State or the Caliphate. They were unrecognized caliphate, but they had declared themselves as the caliphate to have authority over all Muslims and people of the Muslim Islamic faith, right? That's what a caliphate, what a caliph, caliphate, what a caliph is basically like a theocracy. But they were not recognized by other countries or other Islamic Muslim religious authorities, right? They were not recognized by many, although some groups allied themselves and pledged allegiance. And that's what the article was calling for citizens to either convert to Islam, their version, their branch of Islam, which has some hadiths, right? The Islamic hadiths, and which I'm not an expert on, but I had, over the past 11 years, I had many discussions with Islamic scholars and discussing on the hadiths, and of some are really more different branches and different minorities with different hadiths that have very much, it's a diverse Islamo-civilizational hadith-based jurisprudence and theology that it's sometimes very complex with lots of nuance and diversity in the hadiths, right? The interpretation of the Quranic interpretations and hadiths, the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad. So now the Islamic State had declared themselves. They had the Caliph Abu Bakr first, now they're fourth Caliph, but some groups pledged allegiance. So the article that I discovered in the freely distributed newspaper was calling on all to attack us. And I prevented a Bataclan-like style attack. A Bataclan was an Islamic State. They also pledged allegiance to the Islamic State and attack, and many others, even in the parliament. I think that was 2015, October 2015. Zahar Bibo, he also pledged allegiance, Islamic State, and others pledged allegiance to the Islamic State and attacked fellow Canadians. Beheadings, they tried to behead some people and stabbed, and yeah, that was horrible. I went to the RCMP, which is the co-equivalent to the FBI, and I gave the article, I gave the proof of, because when I went to the RCMP, I declare why I was there, and I gave him the article, the proof. After I haven't seen the article being published, I haven't actually even seen the newspaper afterwards, so maybe the whole license was reneged, the whole license was withdrawn, but maybe the editor or the publisher didn't know that the author published until he was let know, hey, what is this? But anyways, it was in circulation, freely distributed, free of cost in Cardenas near the library. I found some. I took several copies and I went right away, marched to the RCMP. It took me a few hours to get there by foot from Cardenas, from the library on Cardenas Street. And I did the right thing to do, basically. My independent citizen intervention and independent citizen action, which of course potentially saved hundreds of people. That's why when I mention it in correlation with the Seth Hatfield incident, because of course the Seth Hatfield incident is of course an incident which was non-Islamic State related because they had not pledged allegiance to the Islamic State. It was different ideology. Again, I have to read it exactly. What was he calling for? How did he justify his tremendous act of violence? And the manifesto, I haven't read it fully. I just read excerpts, and it was part of it. What I read was a bit disturbing in many ways, but of course I would have to read it again in order to fully understand it. And in order, of course, to fully understand it, of course, would we have, of course, to correlate what we got in the relationship, of course, where we are. That integral representation of our relationships would exist now in the aspect of me I don't like violence at all, so. But I am hypervigilant, and of course, I prevented my interventions. See, look at this. This would send somebody to the ER. That's why I always say, be careful here. And our healthcare system now is not that great. It's tough times for Canada. I have no nostalgia. It makes me think of course, and by the way, the RCMP officer, I hope they did a really thorough investigation on the publisher of the article and who the publisher was, and because they could have had cells and sleeping cells, and of course they should have sent to the RCMP and the highest echelons of security for the Department of Homeland Security in the United States, because as you know, my TV's protocols are always by national security in essence. They're always by national security in essence. The protocols which I designed are for the 50 states and the 10 provinces and the 3 states in the categorical 63 toll SSD, which we got to fuse and merge and get rid of the border by implementing my trinity of theories and mass finance fitness and tourism as a quite public-private partnership, which of course will enable us to rebirth and regenerate and give many people second, third chances, because some deserve second, third chances. And as I sing that rock and roll for brothers and sisters, boys and girls in our security forces, and I'm glad to have heard RCMP and the FBI collaborated on the Bishnoi gang, which a few weeks ago, 3.5 months ago, I believe they sent a letter threatening our police forces. Think about that. I never heard anything like that. In transnational criminal syndicate organized group sending overt letters to our police servicemen and women, threatening them that they have soldiers ready to attack us. Bishnoi gang and the FBI and the RCMP did, I guess, Operation Shadow of the Beast too. Well, actually, Operation Shadow of the Beast was just US. It didn't involve the RCMP. It was just US. It was Pam Bondi. I always call her Auntie Scorpio Pam Bondi, but of course, as I relate as a universal revolutionary centrist, because the party which must fuse all existing Canadian-US party with a third party, if you will, between the two, left, right, and center, is the Universal Revolutionary Centrist Party, and the Universal Revolutionary Centrism is North American collective centric, because we have the common manifest destiny, although in the North American collective, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Haiti is also integrated in their relationship, of course, where we are to be. But of course, all that is the administration where we are now, and of course, all that contingent is the apparatus of the administratus of the Imperium Draconis. So, in parallel, and superimposed, without being too scholarly, academic, or intellectual, is the great fusion, which we gotta fuse the RCMP and the FBI. Gotta fuse the RCMP and FBI into the CPS, and CSIS and CIA into the Imperial Security Integrated Service. CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, and CSIS function parallelly and have similar functions and raison d'etre, just like the FBI, the RCMP have similar raison d'etre, and so we gotta fuse them into the Imperial Police Service. So that's nice. I like that. That's nice. This one reminds me of past life, previous incarnations. Many past lives. Sometimes a priestess, farmer, butcher. Sometimes a man, a woman, sometimes a woman, a man, a woman, a man, a woman, a man, a woman, a man. You get that 50-50 now, and please put the recycling in the recycling and the garbage in the garbage, because every garbage that I check contains cans or plastic that should be in the recycling, not in the garbage. And that's the reason why we need the DGA, the Dancing Goddess Army, of course, in the relationship, of course, where we are now. It's just the contingency, of course, and we have the individual and the collective, and the individual and the collective, we have to, of course, do our part for the environment, and that is just the right way to do in that scope, the DGA. So we must do our part. So back to the other aspects of this reality which exists now, today, July 10th, 2026. So I'm going to go back in time a bit to Uncle Connie's declaration statement in 2026, this year in January, and my prediction of 2019 in October, because I predicted what's happening now. I have proof, by the way. I do have proof. I have the World War III scenarios, which is ongoing in many ways, because it hasn't concluded, and things have escalated and deteriorated and happened just like I predicted it. And again, in a parallel manner, Canada, as like as we like to pretend, we're not doing so great. The PBO warned us 6 months ago what I warned about 3 years ago, that we're going to have to cut and cut and cut in the public services. So like I asked Justin Trudeau back then, what are we going to have to cut? Because due to the fact that we're paying too much interest. We can't hold the interest payments on the debt servicing. The public debt servicing burden has reached a critical level. The PBO warned us a few months ago, even Auntie Vash Capellas, CTV discussed it. Auntie Vash Capellas discussed it on CTV the other days. With the PBO 3 years ago, you can see, I have proof, I have the videos. I was on the mountain and I was asking Justin Trudeau, why are we going to cut? Because the interest keeps growing on the public debt. It cannot be sustained. We're paying too much debt servicing. There's too much accumulated debt servicing. We're going to have to cut in the public security, the prisons, correctional facilities, all these costs. Rather into for the healthcare, the aqueducts. We had to cut. Even I never heard that before, cutting in Immigration Canada. Before, just a few months ago, they cut a few thousand jobs the beginning of the year and last year. I never heard anything in the past 11 years. Cuts to Immigration Canada, thousands of jobs. I never heard anything like that. So I think things are worse than we're being told, to be honest. And let's face it, my brothers and sisters in the 50 states, 2/3, 75% of the goods that we export, the United States buys them. Our brothers and sisters in the US, right? Our brothers and sisters in the US buy our goods. Almost 80%. So that is a huge amount. The amount is super big. Not just super big, but mathematically, financially, other countries could perhaps be able to maybe place in, well, depending what the timeline will be, but not more than 5 or 10%, right? No, not more than 5 or 10% in the coming year to replace, because Europe is not doing that great. They have pressures to invest in defense with NATO. They're not doing that good. Britain, along with the king is absent. The king is absent, but Britain is not doing that well. Right? Britain is not doing that well. Oh, let's see. I just saw there that there's a graffiti that says the end is near. I just passed, but I guess let this be an omen for the end of my financial insecurity. Let this be a omen for my financial insecurity. There's a smiley face. The end is near, but I guess the end of my financial economic insecurity, because that's my only stress now, financial. But my theories protocols are worth billions, eh? My theories protocols are worth billions are worth billions. My theories, protocols, initiatives are worth they're worth billions, right? Trillions otherwise. My public forever partnership dream and my fundamental Trinity of theories, which we have to implement the CIT, citizen integration theory, the DRT, debt refusion theory, and the DFT. They're worth millions and billions and trillions. Just like I got trillions of marching steps. Parallel with trillions of kisses created from the forgotten goddess, as we will to build the forgotten goddess temple in the Imperial People's Colosseum, to be of course 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome. And of course the Caesar Superdome is of course something which of course we have to build, and of course that building thereof is of course where we're gonna of course administer and structure it, what we have now to be correlated, of course, where we correlate, where we have on the left and on the right, and in the middle, of course, the correlation and the administrative aspects, of course, of that reality is, of course, also a fundamental aspect. So the reality, which I predicted before, long before Uncle Cardi, of course, came into office in the absence of the king, as you know, I have Canada tatted up, but I always say that we should have been a republic on the 1st of January. 1st of January the year 2000, 1st of January, the year 2000. 1st of January, the year 2000. So, in that regards, the speech, of course, I'm just going to go check out those flowers. Flowers. Wow, beautiful, eh? Thank you, public workers. Quite nice. Public workers rock. Thank you, public workers. And of course, we have, of course, now to be on the relationship, of course, where we coexist. And we have, of course, that correlation where we got, of course, the administrational aspects where we got to correlate. And that is just the reality, of course, of existing with the public workers. I know they were paid by the hour, but they're still good flowers, and it's always good to see good public works. Good flowers and beautiful flowers and good gardens. But I ask my fellow citizens to don't pollute, don't throw trash there, don't throw garbage there. Throw it in the garbage if it goes in the garbage, throw it in the recycling if it goes in the recycling, because our empire will be a garden. We'll have the imperial garden. Universal revolutionary centrism best. So Uncle Connie's speech, we're gonna go deep into geopolitics in this last 15 minutes, because I do 2-hour videos, and then we're gonna get a little bit of that cadence. But I'm so blessed by this. I'm blessed by this water here, and of course this water, of course, gushes, and this water, of course, as in the relationship, of course, to for the public workers which build the aqueduct. So this is a privilege of civilization, which yours truly now, citizen Adrian Hana Dragon, has in the contingency, of course, where we have, of course, now to relate ourselves and to have this water. I'm just going to leave it a bit because it's going to be hot, and because there is, of course, potential for rust. There's always a little potential of rust, but so I'm going to give a little bit of mathematics behind this. So there's always mathematics, right? And there's between a time frame. Basically, since, let's say, for the past 6 hours, there's an exact amount of liters of water which were drank here. But the amount of liters that were drunk were not the exact of liters that were used after pressing the buttons, because some water wasted. So how much water do you think was wasted here that went on the ground and not in somebody's stomach or mouth? So there's an exact percentage. In mathematics, it will be close to, I believe, about 5% or 10%. So as you see, of course, that there's mathematics everywhere, right? There's mathematics everywhere. You see it now? That is the privilege of civilization. So I'm just going to do a little bit of mathematical meditations And probably with the privilege of civilization to just show you again how my AS, Asperger's syndrome, brain works. And of course, this type of thinking and mathematics and geopolitical calculations is, of course, also based for military strategy. And of course, the contingents, of course, of the military strategy, which of course is always in the domain fully integrated for the 50 states, the 10 provinces, and 3 territories, integral for the 63. And if we are to put a time frame, the time frame, for example, between 9 and 9, if we are to correlate it between a domain of time, then of course between that domain of time there would be an exact amount of water which came out. But that's not the exact amount that was drank, because we can't say that all of it was drank, because some of it just went on the floor, just like I wait a few seconds, and you should also, because not too much so that you don't waste, but because there could be rust in the first 10 seconds, you should at least wait 10 seconds after you press the button, I would say. 20 is also good, but don't overdo it, as you waste water. We have to be aware of that, because of course we have I don't know what's happening with there was an announcement, and I've been careful at home. I think I even reduced in the past 3 weeks, I even reduced by 25%. I even reduced by 25% the water consumption, because a few weeks ago they were asking our citizens in Montreal to try to reduce our water consumption due to the fact that there was a broken water main, a broken aqueduct and water main in Atwater here in Montreal, in the city, which affected hundreds of thousands of people. It was a 1984 one. So it was an aqueduct which dated from 1984. So we even have older than that, from 1978. We still have from the 60s and 50s. But this one was specifically from 1984. 1984. That's what they said on the news. So it broke. Hey, look at these colors. This is nice. Oh, I like it. It's colorful. Road deck. It's quite cool. Nice, colorful van. I like saying rainbow. So, right. And so back to the aqueduct. If we are to say between this morning at 9 a.m. and 9 at night, there's an exact amount of liters that are coming out of those 3 fountains. The middle one and the left and the right one. But from the other perspective is the left and right. Anyways, from those 3, from the middle and from the 2 others, one on the sides, from those 3, there's maybe 156 liters. But maybe there's like 6 liters which were wasted. So that 6 liters would represent a percentage, right, of the water which was only drank. And of course, that was only drank, of course, when we have now to be correlation, of course, in the relationship. So, of course, that is the relationship, of course, what we have now. And of course, that is where we got to be correlated in the relationship, of course, where we got to correlate ourselves. And that's what we got, of course, to be. And that's where we have to be relationship of like the, so where we have, of course, to be in the relationship, of course, what we have now. You like that? You like? You like that? Give it that. Right? You like? Yep. Yep. I don't watch it here because sometimes the brakes malfunction. The brakes malfunction, so you gotta be careful not to speed too much. And there's cyclists and bicycles, so just be prudent with turn your heads left and right. So now, in the other part, or the other counter position, is of course the frame of reference, or the points in time which we are to refer the referential water consumption from just that one point, which is a data point, and that's that specific water fountain. But there's around Canada, United States, around the 50 states, 10 processed territories, there's thousands of water fountains just like that for the public, right? And it's a privilege of civilization. Otherwise, we would be drinking from the river. Otherwise, we would have to be drinking from the river. All civilization is a privilege, right? Electricity, water, all of it, security services, all of it, civilization is a privilege, like I stated in 2030. But unfortunately now, Canada is not doing so great. And not necessarily level of awareness or not, but we might be in serious trouble. We might be in serious trouble. Hey? Hey? So that is another total question which has an answer mathematically, which I can only speculate. But for now, we're going to leave it aside and we're going to pass on to geopolitics, because geopolitics is something which I work in geopolitics, independent geopolitical philosopher, analyst, artist, and of course, Baratus, where we have now to be involved. So, of course, all that involvement is, of course, something which has to be related in the faculty, of course, of existing. So now, back to 2019, of course, when I predicted, of course, that there is, of course, all the relationship which it is now. So that is just something which we have to be contingent about, and we have, of course, to correlate. And, of course, that is something which we have, of course, now to relate ourselves with. But, of course, in that contingency, and of course that is just something which we have, and it's something which we of course have to be related upon. So in 2020 2026 20 So, 2026, Jeremy Carney declared in French these words: "C'est la fin d'une fiction agréable et le début d'une réalité brutale." C'est la fin d'une fiction agréable et le début d'une réalité brutale. C'est la fin d'une réalité brutale. No, correction. In French, Uncle Connie said, c'est la fin d'une fiction agréable. C'est la fin d'une fiction agréable et le début d'une réalité brutale. So in other words, Uncle Connie declared and said that it is the end of a pleasant / agreeable fiction, and that it is the beginning of a brutal reality. So before Uncle Connie predicted that is of course a prediction which of course has been made by myself just 6 years before Uncle Connie. 6 years before Uncle Connie. 6 years before Uncle Connie declared that, I of course created a workout training program system to go with such an event. And that event of course has been contingent. What we have now to be correlated in that domain, where we have now that faculty. So before that, of course, it has been in the contingents, of course, to be, and that correlation, of course, is always an event and a point in time which is before Uncle Connie's famous Davos speech, right? In the beginning of a brutal reality. The beginning of a brutal reality. So, of course, has been that, as it has been. So it has been happening generally as I had predicted it. Long before Connie gave his speech announcing the end of the global order as we knew it, I predicted it that it was going to happen. And one of my major analysis was to the fact that they were, of course, of course, there were unresolved conflicts from the 20th century. Look at that beauty. What a beauty. I just love that color. So my, of course, prediction was that there were unresolved conflicts from the 20th century. So those unresolved conflicts from the 20th century, of course, were to re-arise. If you look at all the conflicts that are happening, the major ones, Iran was founded on 11th of February 1979, so it is an unresolved conflict. Hamas was founded in 1987. Israel conflict was founded then. So, of course, that is the contingency, of course, of being unrelated with that aspect, of course, of China and Taiwan being another potential conflict on the horizon. So I predicted it, and I have the solutions, the Trinity of theories. I'm not perfect I am with flaws and vices, but I'm a good girl guy. Pledge allegiance to our family, Adrian Hanna Dragon, support the dream, and always for the firefighters, butchers, bakers, nurses, and doctors, electricians, and the plumbers, and the welders, and all those train conductors, which are on the go away.